The war had been going on for 3 long years. The Zephyrian Empire was tired of fighting the human colonies. Their ships were damaged, their soldiers were exhausted, and their treasury was almost empty. Every battle cost them more than they could afford. High Counselor Vex stood in the great crystal chamber of their homeworld. Around him sat the other leaders of the Zephyrian Empire. Their blue skin looked pale under the bright lights, and their antennae drooped with worry. "We cannot continue this war," said Counselor Rim, his voice heavy with concern. "Our people are suffering. Our resources are gone. We need peace." The other counselors nodded in agreement. They had tried everything to defeat the humans. Their technology was better. Their weapons were stronger. Their ships were faster. But somehow the humans kept winning battles they should have lost. "The humans fight like animals," complained General Zoc. "They do not follow proper military rules. They attack when they should retreat. They use tricks instead of honor." "That is exactly why we must make peace," Vex replied. "We cannot understand them. We cannot predict them. Every time we think we know what they will do, they do something else." The council chamber fell silent. Outside the tall windows, they could see their beautiful crystal cities. But even here on their homeworld, people were scared. The human fleet had come close to their borders twice in the past month. "I will go myself," Vex announced. "I have negotiated peace treaties with 47 different species. I know how to end wars." Counselor Rim looked worried. "The humans are dangerous, Vex. They do not think like us. What if they try to trick you?" Vex laughed softly. "My friend, I have been a diplomat for 60 years. I have dealt with the warrior clans of Altair, the hive minds of Beta Prime, and the silicon-based life forms of the Outer Rim. Humans are just another species. They want something and we want something. We will find a middle ground." The next day, Vex sent a formal message to the human colonies. He used all the proper diplomatic language and followed all the correct protocols. The message was elegant and polite. It spoke of mutual respect and the desire for lasting peace. The human reply came back 3 hours later. Vex expected pages of formal language and complex legal terms. Instead, he got a simple message that made him confused. "Ambassador Jean will meet you at O'Malley's Cantina on Stellar Crossroads Station. Come thirsty. Human colonial government." Vex stared at the message for a long time. He had never heard of O'Malley's Cantina. He asked his assistant to research the location. "Sir," his assistant reported an hour later, "O'Malley's Cantina is a drinking establishment. It is located on Stellar Crossroads Station, which is a trading post on the border between human and neutral space." "A drinking establishment?" Vex was shocked. "They want to hold peace negotiations in a place where people consume alcohol?" His assistant nodded nervously. "Yes, sir. According to our research, it is quite popular with smugglers, traders, and people of questionable character." Vex felt his antenna twitch with annoyance. This was not how diplomatic meetings were supposed to work. There should be formal meeting rooms, official protocols, and proper security. But he was determined to end this war. "Prepare my ceremonial robes," he ordered. "If the humans want to meet in strange places, then we will show them what real diplomacy looks like." 3 days later, Vex's ship arrived at Stellar Crossroads Station. The station was old and dirty, nothing like the clean crystal structures of Zephyrian architecture. Alien species of all kinds walked through the corridors. The air smelled of engine fuel and cooking food. Vex wore his finest diplomatic robes, made of silver fabric that shimmered in the light. His assistant carried a case full of official documents and treaties. Behind them walked 2 Zephyrian guards in full ceremonial armor. They found O'Malley's Cantina on the lower level of the station. The sign outside was cracked and the lights flickered. Strange music came from inside, along with loud voices and laughter. "Are you sure this is the right place?" Vex asked his assistant. Before anyone could answer, the door opened. A human stepped out and Vex was surprised by what he saw. The human was not wearing formal diplomatic clothing. Instead, he wore simple work clothes and heavy boots. His hair was gray and his face had several scars. "You must be Ambassador Vex," the human said with a big smile. "I'm Jean. Welcome to my favorite negotiating table." Vex looked past the human into the cantina. It was dark and smoky inside. He could see aliens of many species sitting at tables, drinking and talking loudly. This was not what he had expected at all. "Perhaps we could find a more appropriate location for our discussions?" Vex suggested politely. Jean laughed and slapped Vex on the shoulder. The friendly gesture nearly knocked the Zephyrian diplomat off balance. "Nonsense," Jean said cheerfully. "Best deals are always made over a good drink. Come on, I'll buy you something special. As they walked toward the cantina entrance, Vex felt his confidence starting to shake. Everything about this situation was wrong. But the war had to end, and this strange human was apparently his only chance for peace. Vex stepped into O'Malley's cantina and immediately wanted to leave. The air was thick with smoke from alien cigarettes and cooking food. The music was so loud that he could feel it vibrating through his bones. Creatures from dozens of different planets sat at round tables, drinking colorful liquids from dirty glasses. This is where you conduct diplomatic business? Vex asked, trying to hide his shock. Gene laughed as he walked to the bar. Best office in the galaxy. No recording devices, no formal rules, and the drinks help everyone relax. The human behind the bar was a large man with thick arms and a friendly smile. Gene. Your usual? Two of them woo, Gene replied. My friend here needs to try real human whiskey. Vex watched as Wu poured amber liquid into two small glasses. The smell was strong and burned his nose. This was nothing like the refined crystal wines served at Zephyrian diplomatic functions. I do not drink alcohol during official meetings, Vex said politely. Perhaps we could have some water and begin our discussions. Gene picked up both glasses and held one out to Vex. First lesson about human diplomacy: we don't trust anyone who won't share a drink with us. It's about respect. Vex looked around the cantina nervously. His two guards stood by the door looking very uncomfortable. His assistant held the case of official documents against his chest like a shield. Everyone was staring at them. In Zephyrian culture, Vex explained carefully, we believe clear minds make better decisions. Alcohol clouds judgment. And in human culture, Gene replied, we believe shared drinks build trust. How can I know you're being honest if you won't be relaxed with me? A large alien at a nearby table laughed loudly. The crystal head is scared of a little drink, he shouted in broken universal language. Several other patrons turned to look. Vex felt his antenna turn red with embarrassment. In all his years of diplomacy, he had never been in such an undignified situation. Jin's expression changed slightly. Nobody talks to my guest that way, he said quietly to the large alien. Apologize. The alien stood up. He was twice the size of Gene and had 4 arms. Make me human. Before Vex could react, Gene had walked over to the alien's table. But instead of fighting, he sat down and poured the alien a drink from a bottle. Listen, friend, Gene said in a calm voice, my buddy over there is new to our customs. Cut him some slack and I'll buy your table a round. The alien looked confused but sat back down. Soon he was laughing and drinking with Gene like they were old friends. Vex watched in amazement as the human turned a potential fight into a friendly conversation. Gene returned to the bar a few minutes later. Sorry about that. Station gets rough sometimes, but most folks are good people. How did you do that? Vex asked. That creature was ready to attack, but you made him your friend. Bought him a drink and treated him with respect, Gene said simply. Works most of the time. Vex looked at the glass of whiskey in his hand. Slowly he lifted it to his lips and took a small sip. The liquid burned his throat and made his eyes water, but Gene nodded with approval. There you go. Now we can talk business. Gene pulled out a data pad that was cracked and covered with stickers. Vex carefully removed his formal treaty documents from their protective case. The contrast was striking. Jin's casual technology and Vex's pristine paperwork. So, Gene said, taking a large drink, your people want to end the war. What are you offering? Vex cleared his throat and began reading from his prepared statement. The Zephyrian Empire proposes a formal cessation of hostilities, with clearly defined territorial boundaries, trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Gene listened while drinking his whiskey. When Vex finished, Gene was quiet for a long moment. That's a lot of fancy words, Gene finally said. But what does it really mean? It means peace, Vex replied, confused. With proper legal structure and binding agreements. Okay, but what about the colonies your people attacked? What about the trade ships you destroyed? What about the families who lost people in this war? Vex had not expected these questions. His documents covered legal matters, not emotional ones. The treaty includes compensation clauses for material damages. Material damages, Gene repeated slowly. You mean money? Yes, appropriate financial reimbursement based on calculated losses. Gene finished his drink and poured another one. Vex, let me ask you something. If someone hurt your family, would money make it better? The question made Vex uncomfortable. Zephyrian diplomacy did not usually involve personal feelings. The legal framework ensures fair resolution of all disputes. That's not what I asked, Jean said gently. Would money fix it? Vex thought about his own family back on the homeworld. If something happened to them, no amount of credits would heal that pain. I see your point, he admitted quietly. Good, Jean said with a smile. Now we're getting somewhere. Let me buy you another drink and we'll figure out how to really end this war. As Jean poured more whiskey, Vex realized this negotiation would be very different from anything he had experienced before. 2 hours later, Vex was beginning to understand human negotiation tactics. Jean had a simple approach. He made everything personal and friendly. Instead of reading legal documents, they talked about their families, their homes, and what they wanted from peace. My son is a trader, Jean was saying as he refilled their glasses. He wants to visit your crystal cities someday. Says they're the most beautiful in the galaxy. Vex felt warmer than usual. The whiskey was affecting him more than he expected. Your son would be welcome. Our cities are indeed beautiful, especially during the crystal blooming season. The cantina door opened and 3 more Zephyrians walked in. Vex recognized them immediately: Commander Miho from the military, Trade Official Tay, and Security Chief Suk. They were all wearing their formal uniforms and looked very serious. Ambassador Vex, Commander Miho said stiffly, we came to assist with the negotiations. Jean looked up from his drink and smiled widely. More friends? Woo, we need more glasses over here. The 3 Zephyrian officials looked around the smoky cantina with obvious disgust. Commander Miho's antenna twitched with disapproval when he saw a drunk alien sleeping at a nearby table. Perhaps we should move to a more appropriate location, Trade Official Tay suggested. Somewhere with proper security and recording equipment. Nonsense. Jean stood up and walked over to them. The negotiations are going great right here. Come on, let me introduce you to my favorite bartender. Before any of them could protest, Jean had led them to the bar. Wu lined up 4 glasses and filled them with whiskey. I do not drink during official business, Commander Miho said firmly. Neither did your ambassador, Jean replied with a grin. But look how well we're getting along now. Vex raised his glass slightly. His speech was a little slurred when he spoke. It is true, Commander. Human diplomatic customs are different but effective. Security Chief Suk looked shocked. Ambassador, are you intoxicated? I am conducting successful negotiations, Vex replied with dignity, though he swayed slightly on his stool. Jean slapped Commander Miho on the back, nearly knocking him over. Relax, Commander. War's over, remember? Time to celebrate. The war is not over until we sign official documents, Miho said stiffly. About that, Jean said, pulling out a napkin from the bar. I've been taking notes. Vex looked at the napkin. It had drink stains on it and some words written in both human and Zephyrian languages. The writing was messy and hard to read. This is your official treaty? Trade Official Tay asked in horror. Best treaties are simple, Jean replied. Look here, no more shooting at each other, open trade between our people and mutual respect. What else do you need? Commander Miho picked up the napkin with 2 fingers, like it was contaminated. This is not how diplomatic agreements work. We need proper legal language, security clauses, and territorial definitions. Boring, Jean said, pouring more drinks. Let me show you guys something fun instead. He led them to a corner of the cantina where there was a dart board. Several aliens were playing a game, throwing sharp metal points at a circular target. Human diplomacy game, Jean announced. Winner gets to add a clause to the treaty. This is ridiculous, Security Chief Suk muttered, but he watched as Jean threw 3 darts in perfect succession, hitting the center each time. Your turn, Commander, Jean said, holding out darts to Miho. I will not participate in drinking games during official negotiations. A human worker at a nearby table laughed. Zephyrians too scared to play darts? No wonder they're losing the war. Commander Miho's antenna turned bright red. What did you say? You heard me, Crystal Head. Your whole species is weak. That's why you want peace, you can't fight humans. The cantina grew quieter. Other patrons turned to watch. Vex tried to stand up but stumbled slightly. The whiskey was making everything seem fuzzy and strange. I am a decorated military officer, Commander Miho said angrily. I have fought in 17 major battles. And lost most of them, the human worker replied with a grin. Face it, your people can't handle real combat. Trade Official Tay put his hand on Miho's arm. Ignore him. He is trying to provoke us. But Commander Miho was already walking toward the humans' table. You question Zephyrian military honor? Jean quickly stepped between them. Hey now, let's keep this friendly. How about we settle this disagreement the civilized way? You mean through formal combat protocols? Miho asked hopefully. I mean arm wrestling, Jean said with a smile. The entire cantina erupted in cheers. Someone cleared a table and patrons began placing bets. Vex watched in amazement as his dignified military commander rolled up his sleeves to compete in what humans apparently considered civilized conflict resolution. Commander Miho sat at the cleared table, his blue arms stretched out and ready. Across from him sat the human worker who had insulted Zephyrian military honor. The man was smaller than Miho and had rough, dirty hands from working on the station. This is simple, Jean explained to the crowd that had gathered around them. Lock hands, keep your elbows on the table, and whoever forces the other person's hand down wins. Vex watched nervously from his bar stool. The whiskey made everything seem like a strange dream. Security Chief Sook and Trade Official Tay stood beside him, both looking worried. Ready? Jean asked. 3, 2, 1, go. Commander Miho was confident. Zephyrian military training included physical conditioning, and his species was naturally stronger than most humans. He put pressure on the human's hand, expecting an easy victory. But the human worker did not give up. His face turned red with effort, but he held his ground. The crowd cheered and shouted bets. Some supported the Zephyrian commander, others backed the human. Minutes passed. Both arms shook with strain. Sweat dripped from their faces. Commander Miho could not believe how strong this simple worker was. Come on, Wu, Jean shouted. Show him what station workers are made of. Slowly, impossibly, the human began to push back. Commander Miho's hand moved toward the table. His antenna turned bright red with embarrassment and anger. This is not possible, he muttered through gritted teeth. Anything's possible when you work with your hands every day, Wu replied, still pushing. With a loud thud, Commander Miho's hand hit the table. The human workers in the cantina erupted in cheers. Several aliens who had bet on Wu collected their winnings. Commander Miho stared at his defeated hand in shock. I demand a rematch. This was not fair. Fair and square, Jean said cheerfully. But hey, if you want another chance, how about we make it interesting? What do you mean? Security Chief Sook asked suspiciously. Jean grinned and gestured to his friends around the cantina. Team competition. Your best 3 against our best 3. Winners get to write the peace treaty however they want. Trade Official Tay shook his head. This is madness. We should return to formal negotiations. But Commander Miho was angry now. His military pride had been damaged in front of everyone. I accept the challenge. Miho, no, Vex called from the bar, but his voice was slurred and weak. Jean whispered something to Wu and 2 other humans. They nodded and rolled up their sleeves. These were not soldiers or diplomats. They were dock workers, mechanics, and traders. But they moved with the confidence of people who were used to physical work and station life. Simple rules, Jean announced. Hand-to-hand only. No weapons, no technology. Last team standing wins. The other patrons quickly moved tables and chairs to create a fighting space. Aliens of all species gathered around to watch. This was better entertainment than they had seen in months. Security Chief Sook and Trade Official Tay stood beside Commander Miho. They looked nervous but determined. All 3 Zephyrians were trained military officers with advanced combat experience. This should be easy, Sook muttered. We have superior training and technology. No technology, Jean reminded him with a smile. Just good old-fashioned fighting. The 2 teams faced each other in the cleared space. The cantina fell quiet except for the background music and the hum of station machinery. Begin, someone shouted. Commander Miho charged forward, using standard Zephyrian military tactics. He aimed precise strikes at pressure points just like he had been taught. But Wu, the bartender, simply grabbed a chair and swung it at him. The chair connected with Miho's midsection, sending him stumbling backward. This was not how military combat was supposed to work. Security Chief Sook tried to use his advanced martial arts training against one of the human mechanics. But the human fought dirty, throwing bar peanuts in Sook's eyes and then tackling him to the ground. Trade Official Tay found himself facing Jean, who was grinning like he was having the time of his life. You humans have no honor, Tay said as he prepared to fight. Honor doesn't win bar fights, Jean replied, then threw his drink in Tay's face. The battle quickly turned into chaos. The humans did not fight like soldiers. They fought like people who had grown up in rough places, using whatever was available. Chairs became weapons. Tables became shields. Even the sawdust on the floor became a tool when Jean threw it in Commander Miho's eyes. Other cantina patrons joined in, some helping the humans, others just fighting for fun. A group of alien traders started their own brawl in the corner. Someone broke a bottle over someone else's head. Vex watched from the bar in horror as his elite military officers were systematically defeated by beings who treated fighting like a game. The humans worked together, covering each other and sharing weapons. When one human was knocked down, two others helped him up. Commander Miho, covered in sawdust and nursing a bruised ego, found himself pinned under a table by three grinning humans. Surrender? Jean asked politely. This is not how civilized beings resolve disputes, Miho gasped. Welcome to human civilization, Jean replied cheerfully. The cantina floor was covered with overturned chairs, broken glass and unconscious aliens. Commander Miho lay on his back, staring at the ceiling with a black eye and wounded pride. Security Chief Suk sat against the wall, holding his bruised ribs. Trade official Tay had somehow gotten his head stuck in a bucket and was making muffled complaints. Jean stood in the middle of the chaos, not even breathing hard. His human friends were laughing and helping injured patrons to their feet. Wu had already started cleaning up behind the bar like nothing unusual had happened. Well, Jean said cheerfully, that was fun. Now about that peace treaty. Vex slid off his bar stool and walked carefully over to his defeated officers. The whiskey made his steps unsteady, but his mind was becoming clearer. He was beginning to understand something important about humans. You planned this? Vex said quietly to Jean. From the beginning. Jean shrugged and pulled out the stained napkin with their treaty notes. I plan to end a war. Mission accomplished. But how? Commander Miho asked from the floor. We are trained soldiers. Our technology is superior. Our weapons are better. How did dock workers defeat us? Because you were fighting by your rules, Jean explained, helping Miho sit up. We were fighting by ours. In a bar fight, the guy with the most experience wins. And humans have been having bar fights for thousands of years. Security Chief Suk finally freed his head from the bucket. This proves nothing. In real combat with proper weapons and ships, you could not defeat us. Jean looked at him with a patient smile. Suk, we've been at war for 3 years. How's that working out for you? The question hung in the air. Everyone knew the answer. Despite their superior technology and military training, the Zephyrians had not won a single major battle against the humans. Every engagement had ended in stalemate or Zephyrian retreat. You fight without honor, trade official Tay said bitterly. We fight to win, Jean corrected. Big difference. The cantina door opened and Admiral Day stepped inside. He was the highest-ranking Zephyrian military officer, and he had come to check on the negotiations. When he saw his officers sitting on the floor, covered in dirt and nursing their wounds, his antenna turned bright red with anger. What happened here? Admiral Day demanded. Diplomatic breakthrough, Jean replied before anyone else could speak. We just signed a peace treaty. Admiral Day looked at the dirty napkin in Jin's hand. That is not a legal document. It's legal enough, Jean said. Your ambassador signed it, your military commander witnessed it, and half the station saw it happen. Unless you want to call Ambassador Vex a liar? All eyes turned to Vex. The Zephyrian diplomat looked at his defeated officers, then at the smiling humans, then at the napkin that somehow contained the end of a 3-year war. The treaty is valid, Vex said quietly. Admiral Day stared at him. You cannot be serious. Admiral, Vex said, standing up straighter despite the whiskey, we came here to end a war. The war is ended. By losing a bar fight? By learning something important, Vex replied. These humans turned a peace negotiation into a military defeat without firing a single shot. They made us attack them, then beat us using rules we never learned. If they can do that in a cantina, imagine what they can do in space. The Admiral looked around the destroyed bar, at his defeated officers, at the humans who were already buying drinks for their former enemies. Slowly, understanding dawned on his face. Any species that can win a war during peace talks, Admiral Day said slowly, is too dangerous to fight. Jean nodded approvingly. Now you're getting it. Want a drink, Admiral? I'm buying. 2 hours later, the cantina had returned to normal chaos. Humans and Zephyrians sat together at tables, sharing drinks and war stories. Admiral Day was learning to play darts from Wu. Commander Miho was arm wrestling other patrons and actually winning some matches. Jean found Vex sitting alone at the bar, staring at the napkin treaty. Regrets? Jean asked. No, Vex replied. But I am trying to understand what happened here. Simple, Jean said, pouring himself another drink. You came here expecting formal diplomacy. We gave you human diplomacy. You expected military rules. We gave you bar fight rules. Every time you thought you knew what was happening, we changed the game. And now? Gene raised his glass. Now we drink together instead of shooting at each other. Seems like a better deal for everyone. Vex looked around the cantina. Zephyrian and human voices mixed together in conversation and laughter. Former enemies were becoming friends over shared drinks and friendly competition. Our military academy will need to add new courses, Vex said thoughtfully. What kind of courses? Human behavioral psychology, Vex replied. And maybe basic bar fighting techniques. Gene laughed so hard he nearly fell off his stool. Best peace treaty ever negotiated. As the night continued, word spread throughout the station and beyond. The war between humans and Zephyrians had ended not with formal ceremonies or signed documents, but with a bar fight that the supposedly superior military force had lost to dock workers and mechanics. The treaty written on a dirty napkin became the foundation for decades of peaceful relations. And O'Malley's Cantina became known throughout the galaxy as the place where humans proved that sometimes the best diplomacy happens over a drink and a friendly fight.